Hello, Lifetree family. It's Pastor Dan here with your daily tree minutes of encouragement for you. In ancient Jewish history, the people of Israel escaped from slavery in Egypt and journeyed through the wilderness in order to reach the promised land. It's a familiar story. This land was to be a place where they were going to find peace and build a life for the future generations. It was a visionary and a faith-filled journey. They were compelled by the hope that what was ahead was greater than what was behind. And that hope gave them the strength they needed to overcome the imposing challenges of the journey. One particular challenge they faced has special relevance, I think, for us today. How do you feed almost 1 million people when you're wandering through unfamiliar territory? Can you imagine the pressure the leaders felt, the fear parents felt, wondering if they would even have enough for their children? So collectively they cried out to God, have you led us out of slavery, only to allow us to die of starvation here in this wilderness? So confused and afraid, they went to bed with hungry bellies. And when they woke up the next morning, there was a peculiar white, flaky substance on the ground. They collected it in buckets and found it to be like flour. They could make breads and other meals out of it. It was a miracle. They didn't even know what to call it, so they named it manna, which literally translates, what is it? What made the manna even more unusual was that it had a really short shelf life. It only lasted 24 hours or so. If they kept any of it for the next day, it was going to spoil. And so the people had to collect manna every day and only enough for that day. And then every night they would go to bed hoping that the manna would be there again the next day. So imagine living in faith for your food on a day-to-day basis. Perhaps you're familiar with the term scarcity mindset. A scarcity mindset assumes there won't be enough. In times of uncertainty, it can be so easy to resort to a scarcity mindset, to allow fear to compel us to hoard and to gather more than we need, selfishly elevating, our own needs above others. The people of Israel couldn't hoard their way through the wilderness. There was an immediately observable consequence if they hoarded. It was moldy and rotten manna. If they were going to make it, they were going to have to trust God to provide day by day. And so that's what they did for 40 years. 40 years of faith lived out one day at a time. And for the record, they never went hungry, and they made it to the promised land. And the scarcity mindset today may not result in moldy manna, but it could look a lot more like empty shelves, while perhaps some neighbors have supply in abundance. It can look like medical professionals and essential workers operating without the critical resources they need. It can look like fear and anxiety dominating our thoughts as we're convinced we won't have enough. It questions whether God is really worth trusting. Now, we may not be wandering in a literal wilderness, but we're most definitely in the thick of a social wilderness. We've never been here before. We can't go back. The only way out is through. So how we respond now will determine how we arrive then. Trusting God day by day may seem to test your faith because that's what it's supposed to do. It's in the testing that faith is proven and we're formed into the best versions of ourselves. Once again, we need manna. We need God to provide our daily bread. The irony is, God has been doing that every single day of our lives. Every good thing we've ever received has been provided by God. We go to bed wondering if we'll have what it takes to get through the days ahead, and every morning we wake up with manna all over the place. It may not cover the ground like flaky white substance, but it's there. It takes the form of blessings and graces, of mercies and wisdom, of love, of kindness. What's changed is simply the size of our reserve. We feel better when we have more than we need for today. But please consider this truth. We still have more than we need. It's just no longer in our hands or in our cupboards. Each morning when we get up, we'll have enough because God has enough. And not only will we have enough, but there will be enough for all of us. After all, what good would it be to get to the promised land if we have no one to share it with? See, we've always been better together.